It's either we win big or lose big. That seems to be the theme for the Calgary Flames for the 2020-21 season. However, I'll definitely talk about it in a separate video. Maybe things are going to change to get off of this inconsistent treadmill. Anyway, for at least this video, it's time for another episode of... Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to another episode of my Calgary Flames in 6. Here I am up to Season 3. This is actually episode number 5, as I like to recap Flames games in 6-game segments. So for this particular episode, we'll take a look back on games 19 to 24. And what I plan to do, intend to do for videos going forward, as I see one of my inspirations, the hockey guy, and gotten some suggestions, I'm going to try to put some timestamps in the description. So if you want to jump to a particular game or a particular segment, as you know, I recap how the last 6 games went. And then we take a look at the standings and stats. And actually, I also throw in the Stockton Heat quick hits. So there'll be some games that actually have happened that I'll touch upon the games that the Stockton Heat have played as they temporarily moved shop up here in Calgary due to COVID. And we'll look ahead to the next 6 games. And we made some big news after the 6th game that I'm going to say warrants its own video and give my take and feelings on it. So let's bring up my notes and we'll take a look at how games 19 to 24 went. As the Calgary Flames, as you recall in the last episode, I was thinking that the Calgary Flames are starting to look like they're in trouble. And they're a dumpster fire, because after they started the 6-game road trip, they got shellacked up in Edmonton, losing 7-1. So they were looking to rebound in game 19. Going back to Monday, February the 22nd, the Calgary Flames now we're going to the Ontario portion of their road trip as they went on to take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. That'll be a 5 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Arena. As not get confused with the Scotiabank Saladome that we have here in Calgary. So as I say, this is the second of 6 games on this road trip and the first of a back-to-back against the Toronto Maple Leafs. As that's one thing that's unique about this season is all the back-to-backs and series that we have. As this is all Ontario. This is an all Ontario, I guess, game recap. So as I said, the Calgary Flames were looking to rebound from the Edmonton Oilers game where they got their asses whooped 7-1. And David Riddick, he actually got the surprise start in this game because hours before the game, Jacob Markstrom was out with a lower body injury. So that's definitely a blow to the Calgary Flames, as Jacob Markstrom, I'm going to say, has been one of the few bright spots and been that stud goalie that the Calgary Flames have needed since we moved on from Mika Kiprusoff after he retired. So the first period, the Calgary Flames, they actually bucked the trend of starting slow. They actually started strong and got their first goal. And it actually was Sam Bennett, one player that's kind of been in and out of the news recently with thinking about does he need a trade or trade demand, or maybe with this change that we'll talk about in a separate video, could his mind change? Well, in this game, he got the first goal just before, under the 4-minute mark, so Calgary had a 1-0 lead. As I mentioned, I put in the notes, this is different from recent trends, as Calgary likes to start off slow and allow a few goals, but there'll be a few of that later in this episode. Calgary Flames picked a strong play, and they maintained a 1-0 lead after the first period. Going into the second period, the Calgary Flames actually continued their strong play and kept up with the Toronto Maple Leafs, as the Maple Leafs are looked upon as being the top team in this North All-Canadian division, and maybe we dare say, could the dream happen that the Toronto Maple Leafs maybe will do this thing called win the Stanley Cup? They're looking good right now. Aided by the power play, Calgary took a 2-0 lead just before the 9.5-minute mark as Matthew Tkachuk, he finally hit the score sheet as he scored on the 6th on the power play. And then also to note that that goal that Matthew Tkachuk scored was his 100th goal of his NHL career. Maybe that was a Boulder trying to get that milestone goal, so that was his 100th goal in his NHL career since we drafted him 6th overall back in 2016. However, the Toronto Maple Leafs did press back in the second half of the second period, but Calgary maintained a 2-0 lead after the second period. Going into the third period, the Calgary Flames got another power play that they capitalized on as Sean Monahan, another player that has been hot and cold recently, but I know Sean Monahan also had to battle with an injury himself. This was just his third goal of the game, just before the 3.5-minute mark of the third period. So Calgary now had a 3-0 lead early in the third period. After that, both teams kept up with each other, as I felt that both teams kept playing, and it looked like a good, well-played game, and provided more encouragement for Calgary Flames fans, considering that I looked upon that the Toronto Maple Leafs were the best team in the North All Canadian Division. Calgary was able to kill off a couple penalties later in the period, as Toronto definitely were pressing back. Keep in mind that Austin Matthews was also on a hot streak, that he hasn't had a point yet. But ultimately, the Calgary Flames actually won this game 3-0. So the Calgary Flames shut out the Toronto Maple Leafs to start off the Ontario part of their road trip. And also mentioned that the Toronto Maple Leafs had a slight edge in shots, 34-33. And then who led the way for the Calgary Flames? Well, it was Matthew Tkachuk. He had a goal and an assist, as well as Sean Monahan. So both Matthew Tkachuk and Sean Monahan each had a goal and assist. Rasmus Anderson chipped in with 2 assists of his own. When it comes to the goaltending story of the game, well, Dave Riddick, who surprisingly got the start for this game, he made 34 saves in the shutout and the first win of the season. While the Toronto Maple Leafs, well, they also were without their stud goalie and Frederik Andersen. It was Michael Hutchinson who made the start for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He made 30 saves for the Toronto Maple Leafs in this game. Interesting note for the Calgary Flames and goaltending, is that David Riddick was the first Flame, I'll stress Flame, first Flame to record a shutout in Toronto since Yves Belanger. If you're wondering who's Yves Belanger, well, you got to go all the way back to when the Calgary Flames were the Atlanta Flames, as he recorded a shutout on New Year's Eve in 1977 going into 1978. So yeah, there was some history made that David Riddick was a part of history. I guess you could say the first Calgary Flame to get a shutout in Toronto. But that was interesting, thinking all that, that sometimes games are spread out, but surprisingly that there was that tidbit. And then I mentioned Austin Matthews. Well, his point streak ended at 17 games. So good start for the Calgary Flames for game number 19. So go to game number 20. This going back to Wednesday, February the 24th, the Calgary Flames were taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs again. Once again at the Scotiabank Arena, 5 p.m. puck drop, second of back-to-back, and game number 3 of 6 on this road trip, primarily mostly in Ontario. And this game proved to be a goaltending duel, as I would say, as there was not any scoring to report until late in the third period, so it was a 0-0 game for most of the game. I would say for much of that game, the Toronto Maple Leafs definitely outplayed the Calgary Flames. For much of the game, Calgary was able to penalty kill was a lot more busy in this game in the first period, as they killed off 3 penalties. So that's definitely something you don't necessarily want to do, especially when a team that still looks to be a little fragile at this stage. As mentioned, the game was scoreless until late in the third period. Then that's when all the scoring happened. Despite the Toronto Maple Leafs strongly outplaying the Calgary Flames in the third period, as we were outshot 12-3 in the third period alone. It was Andrew Mangiapane who scores the first goal in this game, and it didn't happen until and it was the 7th goal of the season. That did not happen until the 16.5-minute mark of the third period. So Calgary had a 1-0 lead, and we thought maybe we would hang on and steal this one with a 1-0 victory. However, William Nylander had some other plans, as he tied up the game 2 minutes later to make it a 1-1 game with just less than a minute and a half to go in the period. So for you, William Nylander, as I like to say, and this one needs overtime. Well, in overtime, William Nylander strikes again, and he actually is the son of Michael Nylander, who actually spent one part of his career with the Calgary Flames. Well, exactly at the 106-minute mark of overtime, the 3-3, for his 7th of the season, the Toronto Maple Leafs wound up taking this one 2-1 in overtime. I did feel that in this game, the Toronto Maple Leafs were the better team and deserved the win, but at least we stole a point in Toronto. So we got 3 out of 4 possible points against the Toronto Maple Leafs in this one. And Toronto, as I mentioned, they heavily outshot the Calgary Flames 39-22 overall. It was 1-1 in overtime, but the Toronto only needed that one shot. That counted, and Toronto was led obviously by William Nylander, who had those 2 goals late in the game, late in the third period and in overtime. I think there was actually some controversy on that play about a potential offside or goaltender interference that the Flames could have challenged, but they did not. So ultimately, Toronto takes this one 2-1. In overtime, David Rittich, once again, who was in net for the Calgary Flames, as Jacob Markstrom was dealing with his injury, he looked pretty strong. Big save Dave. He made 37 saves for the Calgary Flames, while once again Michael Hutchinson was in net for the Toronto Maple Leafs, only made 21 saves. Both team stars were still out with injuries. And also to mention, in this game, there was not much drama because Jake Muzzin was injured in this game. If you go back to those 2 games that the Calgary Flames and the Toronto Maple Leafs played when the scene was shifted in Calgary, there definitely was some drama between Matthew Tkachuk and, the injury to Jack Campbell, their goalie, and then Jake Muzzin flipping pucks at Matthew Tkachuk late in the game, and that really set him off. That Mount Tkachuk erupted. Well, there was no drama in this game for these 2 games. So I'm going to say I was encouraged to how the Calgary Flames looked, taking 3 out of 4 points against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that is the Toronto side. So let's move on to game 21. So game 21, this happened on Thursday, February the 25th, the next night after we lost a tough one to Toronto in overtime. The Calgary Flames are now taking on the Ottawa Senators. This will game for 4 of 6 on the road trip, and first of 4 against the Ottawa Senators. And this was at the Canadian Tire Centre, 5 p.m. puck drop. So now the Calgary Flames are taking on what looked upon to be the weakest team in the North All-Canadian Division, and hopefully an opportunity to make some hay, but hold on here. So as I say, the first period, the Calgary Flames looked flat. They looked really flat. We haven't heard that one before, right? As in Season 3, I've been saying that a lot, and this was definitely the case for most of the games. Ottawa Senators definitely took advantage of that. First, we definitely got to know Drake Batherson very well. Not the rapper Drake, but there was a Drake Batherson who's been on a scoring tear, especially he likes playing against the Calgary Flames. As he opens up the scoring, that was his 6th goal of the season at exactly 7:45 minute mark, and Ottawa takes a 1-0 lead. Then, just over a minute and a half later, Ottawa takes a 2-0 lead as Eric Branson gets his first of the season, and now Ottawa, just like that, they're up 2-0, and Calgary just looked, uninspired, sluggish. I mean, you could say that this was a second of back-to-back with travel, but this has gone on all season under the regime that they were under then, as I can say, as we'll touch upon the surprise after Game 6. So as I say, Ottawa continues their strong play and led 2-0 after the first period. So things are not looking good for the Calgary Flames after they looked all right against the Toronto Maple Leafs, against the best team in the North Division, now against the worst team. However, in the second period, things did look good. There was a little incursion as Milan Lucic scores early in the second period, his 5th at the 1.5 minute mark of the second period. So Calgary had a 2-1 lead, or Ottawa had a 2-1 lead at that point. However, Ottawa continued to take advantage of the Calgary Flames' sluggish play, and it was Connor Brown for Ottawa who scores just past the 4.5 minute mark to make a 3-1 game at this point, and that was his 5th of the season. Then Eric Brandstrom, as I meant to say, scores from center ice. So maybe another blooper goal of the year, but this time worked against the Calgary Flames. Scores at just before the 7.5 minute mark to make it 4-1 for the Ottawa Senators, and that was it for David Rittich, as his night was over. And he definitely was very, very hot about it. Apparently he was banging his head, with a mask on at least, after he was pulled from the game. So this brought in Artem Zakadulin. So apparently the Calgary Flames brought Artem Zakadulin along with camp, not Louis Domingue. So he made his NHL debut in the regular season by coming in relief for David Rittich. But that was it for scoring in the second period. So Ottawa now has a 4-1 lead after the second period, and things are just not looking good. When the Ottawa Senators, we knew that the Ottawa Senators are still rebuilding and not looking to be as strong of a team, but they're not a pushover either. And the Ottawa Senators, they outplayed the Calgary Flames in this game. Third period, the Calgary Flames did outshot the Ottawa Senators, but didn't feel like we had much fight back as the Ottawa Senators were able to pad their lead with a couple more goals of their own. Once again, Colin White, it was the Colin White show as he scored twice in the third period. His third and fourth of the season. First goal for Colin White came at the 5-minute mark of the third period. And then the second goal at 14:46 of the third period. So Ottawa had a 6-1 lead. Yes, you heard that right. The Ottawa Senators had a 6-1 lead. And ultimately, it was the Ottawa Senators who defeated the Calgary Flames 6-1 in this first of 4 straight against the Ottawa Senators, as the Calgary Flames looked inspired again, and another lopsided loss after they played better against the Toronto Maple Leafs, which has been the frustrating part of the Calgary Flames. And it's like, the players, there seems to be a disconnect, or it's like the players might be thinking we're trying to get Jeff Ward fired. Well, I'll touch upon that shortly after I recap the next few games. Ottawa did outshoot the Calgary Flames 31-30, but it was just how the Flames looked in this game. They looked really flat, as they definitely did not have any fire in their belly in this game. Ottawa was led by Colin White, who had 2 goals, and then Thomas Chabot, who had 2 assists as well. So when it comes to the goaltending story, well, Dave Riddick, he made 16 saves for the Calgary Flames before he got pulled. And then there's Artem Zagadulin, who made 9 saves for the rest of the way for the Calgary Flames. And while it was Matt Murray for the Ottawa Senators, who was in net, made 29 saves for Ottawa. Also to note, that being Calgary and Ottawa, as long as we have Matt and they have Brady, this will also be known as the Tkachuk Bowl. Well, neither Tkachuks, Matthew or Brady, got points in this game. So that was game 21. So game 22, this happened on Saturday, February the 27th. The Calgary Flames were taking on the Ottawa Senators yet again. You can either call this late morning or early afternoon delight, depending on where you are in Canada, as all the times I give are in Mountain Time. So puck drop was actually 11 a.m. Mountain at the Canadian Tire Centre. And this is the second of 4 straight against Ottawa, and game 5 of 6 on this mostly Ontario road trip. The Calgary Flames are looking to rebound after an embarrassing loss. That's putting it lightly. And you know what? Maybe that embarrassing loss, at least temporarily, kicked them in the pants, because Calgary actually started off strong. What? The Flames starting strong under Jeff Ward? No way. Well, in this game, I'll say yes way. As the first, it was Juuso Valimaki. He finally got awarded, as he's been strong with his return back to the NHL. He actually got his first goal of the season at exactly the 4-minute mark to make it 1-0 for the Calgary Flames. So Calgary's already had just as many goals against Ottawa as they did in the first game. Then literally 37 seconds later, Michael Backlund scores. So just like that, and it was his 4th of the season, Calgary now takes a 2-0 lead. Then on the face-off after the Michael Backlund goal, there was a dance I should highlight, as it was Milan Lucic for Calgary and Austin Watson who fought right after that goal to to shake things up. But then things did settle down after that. And then once again, Calgary still enjoyed a 2-0 lead. In the first period, started strong. What's going on here? Anyway, after when things settled down, Calgary was able to add to their lead, as another one of our key players that seems to sporadically score is Elias Lindholm's got his 6th of the season, just past the 11-minute mark, so Calgary had a 3-0 lead. This is more like it if we expect the Calgary Flames to be in the top 4 in the North All-Canadian Division, and the Ottawa Senators still rebuilding. However, the one blemish for the Calgary Flames is their penalty kill in this game, as Ottawa got all their goals in this game on the power play. As Ottawa took advantage of a Calgary penalty later in the period, Ottawa got on the board as Drake Batherson, our favorite player who likes to play against us, right? Drake Batherson got a 7th, puts Ottawa on the board, and now it's a 3-1 game for the Calgary Flames. Calgary took that 3-1 lead going into the first intermission, and they actually outshot the Ottawa Senators 20-10. So this was odd. In terms of the Calgary Flames, they started off strong, and they actually showed up. That's been the frustrating part of the Calgary Flames, or like the box of chocolates. Some famous guy said from a bus stop back in 1994 about never know what you get. Well, this continues. Second period, the Calgary Flames were able to add their lead on special teams of their own. First, it was Sean Monahan who scores his 4th on the power play just past the 4.5-minute mark. Now to make it a 4-1 lead for the Calgary Flames. Then while shorthanded, actually the Calgary Flames was aggressive on the power play in this particular play, as Andrew Mangiapane scores his 8th just past the 9.5-minute mark to make it a 5-1 lead for the Calgary Flames. So things are definitely looking good for this afternoon or late morning delight for the Calgary Flames. However, on that same penalty, well, the Calgary Flames are shorthanded, which actually rarely happens, where you rarely have a shorthanded goal and a power play goal that happens on the same penalty, but this happened in this case, as literally 30 seconds later after the Andrew Mangiapane goal, it was Colin White, got his 5th of the season, now makes it a 5-2 game for the Calgary Flames. Then just past the 16-minute mark, it was Matthew Tkachuk. So Matthew got into this Tkachuk goal, scores his 7th, makes it 6-2, and Calgary led 6-2 after the second period. So that just past the 16-minute mark. So things were definitely looking good. And honestly, for this game, I did catch the third period because of the first 2 periods. I decided to, go outside and enjoy some fresh air and, do my Stampede Corral demolition. However, as I say, this was definitely still more like it, what to expect with this matchup, with the expectations with the Calgary Flames and the Ottawa Senators. However, in the third period, the Calgary Flames might have gotten too comfortable and maybe let off on the gas just a little, and they took too many penalties, and it looked like the Calgary Flames were gambling with their lead, as Ottawa definitely looked like the better team in the third period. They did on 3 Calgary penalties. Ottawa was able to get a goal as Brady Tkachuk scores exactly at the 9-minute mark to make it, his 9th goal at the 10-minute mark, as I meant to say. So exactly at the 10-minute mark of the third period, Brady Tkachuk scores and cut the lead to make it a 6-3 game for the Calgary Flames. Just based on how they chew on their mouth guards, that's how you know that Matthew and Brady Tkachuk are related. As how they gnaw on their mouth guards. I wonder how Keith likes it. Just saying out there. So, also the footnote that this is the first time that both Tkachuks, Matthew and Brady, score in the same game. We're going to probably say that a lot this season and going future down the road, as long as Matthew and Brady are on other teams and how their careers are progressing. Ultimately, despite getting into some penalty trouble in the third period and their penalty kill looked a little shaky as Ottawa had all 3 goals on the power play. Ultimately, the Calgary Flames take this game 6-3. But I mentioned they allow 3 power play goals, so we'll take it at this stage. Any wins we can get. So Calgary also outshot the Ottawa Senators 38-34 overall in this game. Calgary was led by Michael Backlund, who had a goal and 2 assists. Matthew Tkachuk and Andrew Mangiapane each chipped in with a goal and assist. And Johnny Gaudreau also picked up 2 assists in this game. On the Ottawa side of the puck, well, it was Drake Batherson. He had 1 goal and assist. And Thomas Chabot chipped in with 2 assists of his own. So when it comes to the goaltending story of the game, it was Dave Riddick, who is still playing starter as Jacob Markstrom is still battling his lower body injury. He made 31 saves for the Calgary Flames. Well, it was Matt Murray, who made 27 saves for the Ottawa Senators. However, there was Joey Discord, who also made 5 saves for Ottawa in the third period. So Ottawa definitely had a goaltending change for game 22. So Game 23, this happened on Monday, March the 1st, as the Calgary Flames were taking on the Ottawa Senators again. This time, 5 p.m. puck drop at the Canadian Tire Centre. 3rd of 4 against the Ottawa Senators, and this is the last game on the 6-game road trip for the Calgary Flames. And guess what? The Calgary Flames did actually start off strong. But Ottawa was able to keep up as both teams battled scoreless in the first period. So, kind of a mixed bag, how I could say how the Calgary Flames looked. They looked all right in the first period, but Ottawa definitely was proven to be no slouch in this game. However, the second period, it was a repeat of that 6-1 game a couple games ago, as Ottawa flashed back in the second period and outplayed the Calgary Flames, as I mentioned, similar to the first matchup. Ottawa did open up the scoring just before the 6.5-minute mark as Artem Sinamonov, if I said the name right, scores his first to make it 1-0 for Ottawa. And then guess who? It's Drake, not the rapper, but Drake Batherson, who scores his 8th of the season and in his 6th straight game 2 minutes later. So Ottawa now has a 2-0 lead going in the second period. However, Milan Lucic, he definitely must like playing against the Ottawa Senators, did score his 6th goal in the power play just before the 10.5-minute mark. So now Calgary cuts in the Ottawa lead, so it's a 2-1 game for Ottawa at that point. Then Drake Batherson again gets his 2nd of the game, 9th of the season at exactly 11:44. So shortly after going off the high that Calgary got within 1 from Milan Lucic, Drake Batherson regained the 2-goal lead for the Ottawa Senators, and now Ottawa takes a 3-1 lead. Ottawa now leads 3-1 after the second period, looking like they'll take another one against the Calgary Flames. Tough to take if we're expected to be a playoff team against the Ottawa Senators. Third period, the Calgary Flames had a much better period, but didn't play with as much urgency after being outplayed in the second period. There we go again with the consistently being inconsistent. Ottawa did get a couple late goals in this game to put this one away. First, it was Colin White who scores the empty netter goal as the Calgary pulled the goalie with just under 4 minutes to go in the third period. So Colin White scores to make it 4-1. And then Ottawa takes a 4-1 lead just over 3.5 minutes to go. And then Ottawa actually gets one more goal to make it 5-1, just under 2.5 minutes, with goalie back in net with Evgeny Dadonov, who scores the 7th of the season. So Ottawa ultimately takes this one 5-1. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, we seem to either win big or lose big. So a couple lose bigs, especially recently if you count that Edmonton game, if you go back to the last episode. So ultimately, in Ottawa, Ottawa actually takes 2 out of 3 against the Calgary Flames, and Ottawa actually outshot the Calgary Flames 36-28 overall. Ottawa was led by Drake Batherson, who had 2 goals, and then third overall pick in this past draft, Tim Stützle, who's been fitting in nicely with the Ottawa Senators, chipped in with 2 assists. So when it comes to the goaltending side, it was David Rittich, who made 31 saves for the Calgary Flames, and it was Matt Murray, who made 27 saves for the Ottawa Senators. So if you include that game against Edmonton where we lost 7-1, and these 5 games in this Ontario part of the road trip, the Calgary Flames, I would say, was a little disappointing to go 2-3-1 on this road trip, especially when we lost 2 out of 3 against the Ottawa Senators. So now let's get to game 24. This happened on Thursday, March the 4th, as the Calgary Flames were taking on the Ottawa Senators yet again for the 4th straight game. However, the scene shifts now back to Calgary at the Scotiabank Stadium, 7 p.m. puck drop. Back home after, as I mentioned, a so-so disappointing road trip for the Calgary Flames, and finish off a 4 straight set against the Ottawa Senators. A few notes for this game. Well, Derek Ryan actually draws back into the lineup after being out with a finger injury for the past month. Jacob Markstrom actually comes back from his injury, but he dresses as a backup as David Rittich gets the start, and Sam Bennett, who actually was a healthy scratch for this game. Continue to maybe potentially feeling speculation, as you know, last month apparently it was brought out that he wants to trade out of Calgary, and basically, I should also sum up that looking at the 6 defensemen, Oliver Shillington actually has played a lot more of these games recently in place of Nikita Nesterov, and then, Dominic Simon was put on waivers. Jochen Nordstrom's been in and out, but there's definitely been some pluggers, as I'll mention in this game, that some of our depth players actually scored for game 24. First, the Calgary Flames actually got off to a strong start. You don't say, Brett, do you? Well, they actually did. Some unusual suspects who scored in this game as well. First, just before the 2.5 minute mark, it was professional tryout Brett Ritchie, who actually got his first goal of the season and a Calgary Flame. 2.5 minute mark, so Calgary now has a 1-0 lead against the Ottawa Senators. Then literally 37 seconds later, just shy of the 1 second shy of the 3 minute mark, it was Dylan Dubé who got his 4th of the season to give Calgary an early 2-0 lead. So this start was almost similar to the afternoon game where Calgary got off to a fast start and got a couple goals of their own. However, Ottawa did get on the board just before the 5.5 minute mark as Josh Norris got his 5th of the season, makes it a 2-1 game for the Calgary Flames. Then just before the 12 minute mark, it was Sean Monahan who finally got a goal at his 5th of the season, and Calgary took a 3-1 lead at this point. Then, with 40 seconds left in the first period, I always call it the dagger when someone scores in the final minute of the period. It was Josh Levo who finally got his first as a Calgary Flame. I'm going to say he's definitely had some hard luck so far in the season. Another player that's kind of been in and out of the lineup, but that could potentially change with the change that I'm going to touch upon after this game, as Calgary had a 4-1 lead after the first period. So Calgary led 4-1 after the first period. This is more like it, especially considering stressing the matchup with the Calgary Flames and the Ottawa Senators. That also ended Matt Murray's night for the Ottawa Senators, as Joey Decord took over the rest of the way starting in the second period. Second period, Ottawa did play a little better than the first period, with the Calgary Flames seemed to have having either good or bad periods. I would say Calgary didn't play terrible, but they didn't, noting that Ottawa did press back. That Ottawa Senators are a hard-working team right now. And maybe the fact they have no pressure because they don't have any expectations on them. Only one goal to report in the second period is Dylan Dubé. You'll be hearing this person's name a lot for this particular game. He got his second of the game at exactly 7:16, so he got the goal in the first period. Now he has 2 on the game to give Calgary a 5-1 lead after the second period. So going into the third period, let's just say that Dylan Dubé show continues. As just past the opening minute mark at 1:17 exactly, Dylan Dubé gets the hat-trick for his third of the game, and that puts him up to 6 goals of the season. So Calgary had a 6-1 lead at that point on the strength of the hat-trick of Dylan Dubé. However, Ottawa did get a couple goals of their own, as Artem Anisimov scores just over a minute later after Dylan Dubé got his virtual hat-trick. I mean, how can he collect hats in an arena with no fans? But Artem Anisimov scores to make it 6-2 for Calgary at that point. Then Ottawa makes it a 6-3 game for Calgary exactly 6 minutes in as Ryan Dzingel gets his third of the season. Then Ottawa seemed to be pressing back, kind of similar to that Saturday afternoon game. After when the Calgary Flames took a big lead, and then Ottawa got a couple goals of their own in the third period. However, just over a minute later, it was Derek Ryan, player who just recently dropped back into the lineup, who also scored his first of the season to make it 7-3 for the Calgary Flames, and ultimately the Calgary Flames win this one 7-3. So the Calgary Flames and the Ottawa Senators, I would say so far in this season, they split the 4-game set with 2 wins apiece. I would say, as a Flames fan with expectations, I am disappointed. However, I would say if you're an Ottawa fan, you'd actually be pretty happy with that. So it was a split, 2 wins each. Ottawa actually outshot the Calgary Flames 32-29 overall. Calgary, well, we were led by Dylan Dubé with 3 goals, and Matthew Tkachuk chipped in with 3 assists of his own. And you had Derek Ryan, Sean Monahan, and Brett Ritchie. Yes, Derek Ryan and Brett Ritchie, some fourth-line pluggers, also chipped in with a goal and assist each. If we can get that all season, maybe there's hope that we can be in the top 4, and maybe this change I'm going to touch upon might give us hope. And I mentioned that Ottawa, well, they led by Josh Norris, who had a goal and assist, and then the fact that Matthew Tkachuk picked up 3 assists in the game. I'll just note that Brady Tkachuk, he had an assist in this game, so both Tkachuks got on the score sheet. Dave Riddick, he made 9 saves for the Calgary Flames, while Matt Murray, he made 7 saves for Ottawa in the first period before Joey Decord took over the rest of the way and made 15 saves the rest of the way. Now, after this game, the Calgary Flames shocked the hockey world, as there was some speculation, and I kept saying that there might have been, some fans calling for Jeff Ward's head. Well, the Calgary Flames, after this game, the reason why you don't see a Jeff Ward post-game interview is because after this game, decision must have been made. The Calgary Flames actually fired Jeff Ward. Guess what? Who's coming back? Daryl Sutter is named head coach of the Calgary Flames, and I'll definitely talk about that in a separate video. So after this episode, next episodes, we're going to be talking about Calgary Flames coach under Daryl Sutter again. So after that shock, how the Calgary Flames look after 24 games? Well, they are 11-2 for 24 points for 24 games, and they're 5th in the North All-Canadian Division. So that's where I'll end the recap. So let's take a look at some stats and standings, shall we? So first, we'll take a look at quick stats for the Calgary Flames. So when it comes to goals, well, Johnny Gaudreau leads the way with 9. Then Andrew Mangiapane is second with 8. Matthew Tkachuk, 7. And then Elias Lindholm and Dylan Dubé are tied for top 4 with 6 goals each. I guess when you get a hat trick, that propels you up the goal list. So when it comes to assists, well, Elias Lindholm leads the Flames with assists with 14. Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk and Sean Monahan each all tied with second with 12. Rasmus Anderson is in the top 5 with 11. And then when it comes to points, Johnny Gaudreau leads the way with 21. Then Elias Lindholm with 20. Matthew Tkachuk with 19. Sean Monahan with 17. And Rasmus Anderson with 14. So that's the top 5 looking in the NHL app. So when it comes to goaltending, well, Jacob Markstrom, although he did not play at all in this segment, he is still, after 15 games, he is 8-6-1 with a 287 goals against average and a 909 save percentage with 2 shutouts. So now when it comes to David Rittich, well, after 11 games, he is 3-5-1 with the goals against average actually still under 2, or 3 I should say, at 293 and a save percentage of 904. So despite big scores that the Calgary Flames lost, both goalies have had save percentages over 900 and goals against average under 3. And Dave Rittich has that one historical shutout in Toronto. I mean, Artem Zagadulin, all he has is just that one appearance in Ottawa. We had a no decision. I mean, he allowed 2 goals. He has a 425 goals against average and 818 save percentage. But now that Jacob Markstrom is back in the lineup, we're going to probably see a lot more of Jacob Markstrom. So let's take a look at some league leaders, shall we, when it comes to the skaters. Well, the top 5 in scoring, well, Connor McDavid still leads the way with 40 points. Patrick Kane and Leon Draisaitl are tied with second with 35 each. Mitch Marner has 34, and Mark Scheifele is now in the top 5 with 32. The North All Canadian division actually is the highest scoring division when it comes to goals per game, and definitely been seeing that both in good and bad when it comes to the Calgary Flames. Goal leaders, well, Austin Matthews leads with 18. Connor McDavid and Tyler Toffoli each are tied with 14. And then Chris Kreider for the New York Rangers actually has 13. And then you got Alex DeBrincat and Brock Besser with Vincent Trocheck, all tied with the top 5 with 12 goals each. And then when it comes to assists, well, Connor McDavid leads with 26 assists, followed by Leon Draisaitl with 25 assists. And then Patrick Kane, Mitch Marner each tied for third with 24. And then Mark Scheifele runs out the top 5 in league leagues assists with 21. So that's, I'll take a look at the stats. So now let's take a look at the standings. Where the Calgary Flames rank? And do you think we still have some hope, despite the fact that we have decided to bring back Daryl Sutter as head coach and maybe shake things up? So in the North, Scotia North Division, the Toronto Maple Leafs lead the way. After 25 games, they are 18-5-2 for 38 points. Second place, I would say, is the Winnipeg Jets. They are 23 games. They're 15-7-1 for 31 points. I'm going to say Toronto and Winnipeg right now, I'm going to say, are both firmly, comfortably in playoff spots the way they're playing right now. Edmonton, they're still third in the North Division. After 25 games, they're 14-11-0, or 28 points, but they definitely have struggled against the Toronto Maple Leafs. One team that I think maybe we could catch is the Montreal Canadiens, and just like the Calgary Flames just yesterday when they recently decided to change coaches, well, Montreal also changed coaches last week in Claude Julien. As Montreal, just like the Calgary Flames recently, the Ottawa Senators are a coach killer. Just ask Claude Julien and Jeff Ward. Well, the Montreal Canadiens are in the final playoff spot. After 22 games, they're 10-6-6 for 26 points. That's where the playoff cut line is. Fifth place is the Calgary Flames, as are 11-11-2 for 24 points. We are 2 points behind the Montreal Canadiens, but they have 2 games in hand. And then in sixth place is the Vancouver Canucks. After 27 games, they're 10-15-2 for 22 points. I'm going to think the Vancouver Canucks are more in trouble. And then the Ottawa Senators, well, after 26 games, they're 18-17-1 for 17 points. So I'm going to still say, looking at this and now with the change that the Calgary Flames made, which I'll talk about in a separate video, we might still have some hope, but I think Vancouver and Ottawa are likely done for the season. They're too far behind. So that's the North All Canadian division. So when it comes to the Discover Central division, well, the Tampa Bay Lightning lead that after 21 games. They're 16-4-1 for 33 points. Then the Carolina Hurricanes are second after 23 games. They're 16-6-1 for 33 points. And then the Florida Panthers. When do we finally give them some due? I think the Florida Panthers, they're looking good, and should say they finally are turned the corner. In 22 games, they're 14-4-4 for 32 points. So they were only 1 point behind Carolina and Tampa Bay in the Central Division. And then how about the Chicago Blackhawks? Surprisingly, they're in the top 4. After 24 games, they're 12-7-5 for 29 points. So Chicago is still hanging around. Below the cutoff line, well, the Columbus Blue Jackets, after 25 games, they're 10-10-5 for 25 points. Then the Nashville Predators, after 23 games, they're 10-13-0 for 20 points. Then the Detroit Red Wings, after 26 games, they are 7-16-3 for 17 points. However, the Dallas Stars, well, they are last because of points, but points percentage they won't be. They actually would be sixth if they need to do the points percentage, because the Dallas Stars, well, they got delayed with COVID, and then the fact that the freak snowstorm in Texas, well, Dallas only has played 18 games. They're 6-8-4 for 16 points, but looking at the Central Division, the top four looks pretty much firmly set right now. I'm going to still say Columbus, Chicago might be battling for that final playoff spot. Maybe Dallas if they can catch up, but that's how I think the Central Division looks right now. I think it's finally time to say the Florida Panthers. We got to start giving them some due, but they need to ultimately, if they have a strong season, it's do they get out of the first round? Keep in mind the Florida Panthers, they have not won a playoff series since they went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals in 1996. Florida has not won a playoff series since then. So there's some perspective for me as a Flames fan and the Toronto Maple Leafs fan. So now I'll continue on the league. In the Honda West Division, the Vegas Golden Knights lead the way. After 19 games, they're 14-4-1 for 29 points. Second place is the St. Louis Blues. After 23 games, they are 13-8-2 for 28 points. Then the Colorado Avalanche. After 20 games, they are 12-7-1 for 25 points. I mean, the top three is kind of what is expected, but the Colorado Avalanche definitely have looked vulnerable at points in this season. I know they had some COVID and missed Nathan McKinnon, but I hear he's coming back. In fourth place, well, you got the Minnesota Wild. After 20 games, they are 12-7-1 for 25 points. And then the Arizona Coyotes, they're fifth below the playoff line, but they're knocking on that line, on the door. After 22 games, they're 10-9-3 for 23 points. Let's not count out the Los Angeles Kings. They're also going to be pressing. So that fourth place race, I think, is going to be exciting in the West Division. As the Los Angeles Kings, after 21 games, they're 9-8-4 for 22 points. And then you got the San Jose Sharks after 20 games. They're 8-10-2 for 18 points. And the Anaheim Ducks, after 23 games, they are 6-12-5. So I'm going to say in the West Division, I'm going to say San Jose and Anaheim are probably out of it. The fourth place is going to heat up between Minnesota, Arizona, and Los Angeles. That is something to look forward to there. So the last division is the Mass Mutual East, and I think we might be seeing some separation, but there's going to be one team that's going to be disappointed because they won't be in the playoffs. So in first place, you got the Washington Capitals. After 22 games, they are 13-5-4 for 30 points, followed by the New York Islanders. After 23 games, they are 13-6-4 for 30 points. Then you got the Philadelphia Flyers. After 20 games, they are 12-5-3 for 27 points. Then the Boston Bruins. After 20 games, they're 12-5-3 for 27 points. And then the playoff cutoff line, well, I have not mentioned the Pittsburgh Penguins yet because they are in fifth place as they are 22 games, they're 12-9-1 for 25 points. So there's going to be one good team that we looked upon that could be a contender that will not make the playoffs, as I can say this is the strongest division. Then the New York Rangers, after 21 games, they're 9-9-3 for 21 points. Then you got the New Jersey Devils. After 19 games, they're 7-10-2 for 16 points. Then you got the Buffalo Sabres, who were last for 21 games. They were 6-12-3 for 15 points. So I'm going to say five of the teams are going to likely be battling out for the playoffs. I'm going to say the Rangers, the New Jersey Devils, and the Buffalo Sabres. I think they're too far behind given the competition in the division. So that is how all the divisions look and the stats. So before I get into the Stockton Heat, quick hits and looking ahead, here's how the season series looked for the Calgary Flames versus the North Division. As the Calgary Flames were 4-2 against the Vancouver Canucks, and then against the Edmonton Oilers, we are 1-2-0. And then against the Winnipeg Jets, we are 2-2-1. And then against the Toronto Maple Leafs, we are 1-2-1. And then with the Ottawa Senators, we are 2-2. And then against the Montreal Canadiens, and I'm thinking we still have 7 more games to go with the Montreal Canadiens. I'm going to think Flames Canadiens games are going to be even more critical. Now, given how the division looks and the fact that both teams changed coaches, they are 1-1. So that's how the Flames look versus against the North All Canadian Division. That's how the season series look right now. So anyway, let's bring on the Stockton Heat quick hits. So here's that. So I got actually 5 games to touch upon when it comes to the Stockton Heat quick hits, as they have moved shop right here in Calgary. So the first 4 games, the Stockton Heat played the Toronto Marlies at the Scotiabank Saddledome. So game 1, this was on Sunday, February 21st. The Toronto Marlies defeated the Stockton Heat 7-1, and that was a 2 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. The only notes I'll mention is Luke Phillip was the only one that scored for the Heat. Dustin Wolf actually started in net for the Heat. He made 6 saves and 11 shots, and then Garrett Sparks, who actually got signed by the Stockton Heat, who was here on professional tryout, he made 19 saves, 17 saves and 19 shots. So that was game 1. So game 2, this happened on Tuesday, February 23rd, as the Heat were taking on the Marlies yet again. This was a 6 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome, and the Toronto Marlies actually beat the Stockton Heat 5-1 in this game. But the highlight here is that Alex Gallant, who is not property of the Calgary Flames, as I know, but he is signed with the Stockton Heat, he had a goal and a fight. And then Garrett Sparks, who played in net, made 20 saves and 25 shots. But then things looked better for the Stockton Heat. So game 3, this happened on Wednesday, February 24th. The Stockton Heat actually beat the Toronto Marlies 4-2. This was a 7:30 puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. What the highlight is Adam Ruzicka, one of the players that we drafted in the 4th round back in 2018. He had a goal and an assist, and Matthew Phillips picked up 2 assists in that game. Also highlight Connor Zary, the player that we drafted in the 1st round this past draft, Colton Pullman, and Emilio Pettersson, who some say is the Norwegian Wayne Gretzky. They all each got an assist, and that was their first professional point. So that was game 3, and then Connor Mackey, who actually briefly played a couple games up at the Calgary Flames, picked up an assist as well. And Dustin Wolf, he made 36 saves on 38 shots. So Dustin Wolf definitely redeemed himself, as this was his first stint of professional hockey in the American Hockey League. So that was game 3. Game 4, Friday, February 26th, as the Calgary Flames were finishing up their 4th game, or the Stockton Heat, I should say, finishing up their 4-game set with the Toronto Marlies. They actually beat them 8-1. This was a 2 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. More quick hits. Adam Ruzicka got 2 goals and an assist. Martin Pospisil, he actually had a goal, 2 assists, and a fight. That will make Gordie Howe proud, and both players that we drafted in the 4th round in 2018. So any players that we get in that draft will be a bonus. And then there was a Mark Simpson, who is not with the Calgary Flames. He actually had 2 goals in this game. And then Dustin Wolf, who made 26 saves on 27 shots. Then the last game for this quick hits is on Wednesday, March the 3rd, the Calgary Flames went on, or the Stockton Heat. God, how many times am I going to say that? The Stockton Heat, they went on the road to take on the Belleville Senators, Ottawa's farm team. And the Stockton Heat actually beat the Belleville Senators 4-1. This game was at the Canadian Tire Centre, 5 p.m. puck drop. And some highlights to mention. Connor Zary actually had 2 goals and an assist. Adam Ruzicka had a goal and an assist. And Matthew Phillips had 2 assists. And then Garrett Sparks, he made 38 saves and 39 shots. And now that the Western Hockey League is about to get going, including the U.S. division, actually Dustin Wolf got assigned back to Everett of the Western Hockey League. So the Stockton Heat, they're 3-2-0 for 6 points and it's 3rd in the AHL Canadian division. So that's the Stockton Heat quick hits. So I'm going to say how many games the Calgary Flames play and how many games the Stockton Heat play. I'll just rattle off the scores and who the highlights. So that was the Stockton Heat quick hits. So here is the last part of the episode where we look ahead to the next 6 games. So look ahead to the next 6 games, which will be episode 6, and now we'll say coached under Daryl Sutter. Can you believe that? So game 25, we'll be looking forward to this one, although there's word that because of COVID requirements and all that, I think Daryl Sutter isn't going to join the team in person just yet. But on Saturday, March the 6th, the Calgary Flames take on the Edmonton Oilers at an 8 p.m. puck drop at Rogers Place at Hockey Night in Canada. Hopefully we can redeem ourselves after being shellacked a couple weeks ago against the Edmonton Oilers. That was game 25. Game 26, the Calgary Flames on Sunday, March the 7th, will be taking on the Ottawa Senators again. Back home in Calgary at 7:30 puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. And the game 27, this will be on Thursday, March the 11th. The Calgary Flames will be taking on the Montreal Canadiens, and I'm going to think Flames-Canadian games are going to look a lot bigger now, given how the standings look. This will be a 7 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. And then on game 28, this will be on Saturday, March 13th. The Calgary Flames will be taking on the Montreal Canadiens again in Calgary. That'll be a 5 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. And then on game 29, Monday, March the 15th, the Calgary Flames will be taking on the Edmonton Oilers, and that would be a 7 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. And then game 30 on Wednesday, March the 17th, the Calgary Flames will be taking on the Edmonton Oilers again, 8 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. So Calgary's got a few more home games to look forward to. We got 3 against the Edmonton Oilers, and we always get up for that. Hopefully a lot more now that the coaching change has happened. We got another game against the Ottawa Senators and a back-to-back against the Montreal Canadiens. And I'm going to say, looking at the standings, those games against Edmonton and Montreal are looking big, much bigger right now. And hopefully this shake-up with the Calgary Flames deciding to bring back Daryl Sutter as head coach, maybe we're still going to try to salvage the season and the team will respond. So that's what I have for my Calgary Flames in 6 for episode number 5 when it comes to games 19 to 24. Hopefully we'll buck this trend of winning big, losing big. Maybe play with a lot more urgency and tidy things up. We'll see if this coaching change will help for the Calgary Flames. So anyways, I like to say, if you want to follow along this Calgary sports fan's journey, home the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, but I also do other variety of non-sports content like personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also do share my experiences with him on the road or at a sporting event. So if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, do follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey. You know what you need to do, just make sure to like, subscribe. I also have my other social links down in the description below. And actually the last couple of weeks I've experimented with different content as I took part in the Chinook Blast Winter Festival, so I have those videos up. There's quite enough side quests like the Northern Reflections in Inglewood and the Snowbird Festival that happened at Logie House. And then of course, you know, my documentation of the Stampede Corral demolition. So that's all I have on my YouTube channel. So I'm going to say go Flames go, and I guess we're going to get ready for Daryl Sutter to come back to coach the Flames yet again. So see that video where I'll talk about how I feel about that alone. So I'm going to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.